This is 2020. A great event has been put together by our staff, that being Jean and Matthew. They've been working very hard to ensure that this will be the kind of event that we have come to expect as members of SEDC. I also want to thank our sponsors who have been with us for a long time and have stayed with us throughout our planning and different date changes. Without you, this event would not be what it is. And thank you to the members of SEDC for staying the course with us during what has been a very challenging year. Yes, I know that is a very misused term these days, but it has been very challenging for all of us, both in our professional jobs and within SEDC. I hope that you all will have a great day and will gain knowledge to make you more effective in your role. Thanks, and have a good afternoon and a good day.
Well, good morning, Will. Glad to see you up on this virtual stage with me. And good morning, everyone. Glad you could join us. I just want to echo some words of welcome, just as Will did. But I'm Gene Stinson. I'm president of SEDC, and we would like to welcome you to our 13th annual Meet the Consultants event this year. And as you can tell, we are virtual, like Will said, and we're calling it this year Coast to Coast, where you're going to hear from consultants all across the country. And with a virtual platform like Lunchpool, we have that ability to do something from coast to coast. So we do have the very best selection of consultants here today to talk with you. You're going to hear from 15 different consultants on 5 industry panels that will talk about trends, what you can expect in the future from these particular industry sectors. And then for those of you that will be joining us, our sponsors, again, we thank you as well, like Will said, in making this event possible. We do have a VIP lunch with our sponsors and consultants at noon. So there will be an additional 5 consultants join us there. So for a total of 20 consultants that folks will come in contact with today if you're a sponsor. But more about the luncheon later. So now I want to give you just a couple of housekeeping things. As I said earlier, you're going to hear from 5 different panels in 1 hour blocks at a time. And the format is the same for all of these panels that you're going to see. So we have a 10 to 11, 11 to 12, and our lunch is from 12 to 1. We're going to take a 30-minute break from 1 to 1:30. We'll pick back up 1:30 to 2:30, 2:30 to 3:30, 3:30 to 4:30. That'll give us 5 total blocks of hearing about different sectors. So I'm going to use the first panel that we're going to have at 10 o'clock as an example of the breakdown in the timing of that. So we'll start in just a moment with our first one, and then we're going to do a 20-minute block of time where you will hear just from the panelists, so from 10 to 10:20. Then at 10:20, we're going to break into some table conversations with those 3 panelists. They will go out, if they're not already seated, at tables 3, 4, and 5. Just those 3 tables will have a consultant sitting at that table. They will also have a table host at that table, and I think most of them are seated there already. But if for some reason, if you're seated at that table and our panelists can't get to that table, or our table host, you may be tapped on the shoulder by the Lunchpool people and asked to join, to kindly move and let the consultant and the panelists and the table host get at the table, because we will reserve those for those conversations. So 10:20 to 10:30, that conversations will go on, then you'll hear a bell. And then at that time, we would ask the folks that are not a consultant or a table host at 3, 4, and 5 if you would go and move to another table. That way, then other folks can come and maybe have a conversation around the table 3, 4, and 5 with consultants at that time. So that'll be to 10:40. At 10:40 until the next one starts at 11 is basically a break. Just to stretch your legs, get up, do whatever you need to do, and then be back ready for the next one at the top of the hour. So Pretty simple. And again, we would like to welcome all of you here. So now I'm going to turn it over to our first panel on corporate headquarters projects to one of our great sponsors, Ms. Lori Morgan. She is the Vice President of International Business for the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Gene. You called me Lori Morgan. It's Lori Odom.
Oh, I was fixed on Nashville. I remember that too much.
I was going to say, Gene, I can't sing during this panel, so I don't want to disappoint people.
And you don't have blonde hair either.
I don't. Maybe I will one of these days.
I believe I called you Lori Morgan.
Hey, I take it as a compliment. Thank you,
See,
Gene.
I grew up with the Ralph Emery show, so I saw her a lot.
That's great. Well, hey, I'm just giving you a hard time. Thanks for all the work that you guys have done. And why don't we bring up our key panelists for this corporate headquarters and relocations panel. So excited to have with me today, Seth Martindale, Mark Williams, and Dennis Donovan, who I think should be joining us here on the screen in just a second. Here we go. There's Dennis.
Good morning.
Good morning. And you guys all know Dennis. Dennis is with Wadley Donovan Gutshaw Consulting. And I think the others should be up here in just a second. There we go. There's Mark. Dialing in from South Carolina. Thank you, Mark Williams with Strategic Development Group. And it would make sense that coming in from California, Seth would take just a little bit longer to show up on our screens, but I think he'll be here in just a second. You know what, why don't we go ahead and get started with our questions, because we just got the 20 minutes, and I think Seth will step in here just as soon as he gets online and everything is working. The first question that I wanted to ask you guys was just basically what kind of projects you're seeing right now. Are you seeing any trends in what's coming in? Is there anything that's different, kind of pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, or kind of in the pandemic now? Why don't we start with you, Mark? What are you seeing as far as your corporate headquarters and relocations?
Sure, Lori. Great to be here. Dennis, always good to be with you. And Seth, when he arrives, we'll love to have him too. We typically, Lori, will do location projects for 2 to 3 headquarters a year. They range from 300 jobs to 2,000 jobs. In the years prior to 2020, we were seeing a trend to more of a regional look. I think a lot of our clients felt that they could better serve regions from a more discrete area. We've looked at a number of large cities, and sometimes the move was to the regional area because of cost, because of traffic and other concerns. So prior to COVID, we were seeing more of a regional shift. That doesn't mean that's what everybody wants to do, but that's what many of our clients were doing. I guess fast forward to COVID, I mean, it's kind of a mixed up world right now, but I don't expect that trend will change generally. I think there is some concern about larger cities, how real that is after a vaccine and improved therapeutics. I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if that trend didn't continue to a certain extent. It's kind of interesting right now, just to add, I mean, I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago, 50% of the US office space is occupied right now, meaning people are going to work there. Where's that going to end up? I mean, I think next year there's going to be some kind of equilibrium where the number is much higher than that, but will it be at 100% of levels, and the leases that are expiring and other things that are going on? And so in the post-COVID environment with increases in technology and virtual communication, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if some of these offices hadn't changed because people didn't spend more time working virtually. But I think in the end, everybody's human. Everybody wants to get together. And I think one of the hidden problems of a lot of people working virtually now is people that are onboarding and younger workers not getting the time and the mentoring and that career experience. So I think things will change, more regional. I think people will adjust how their offices look and lay out, and that's how I see it.
What about you, Dennis? What do you think? What are your predictions or any trends right now for corporate?
Thanks, Lloyd. Hey, it's good to be with everybody here today. I don't see any significant changes in trends relative to headquarters geographic deployment. Companies relocate headquarters for very strategic reasons. Sometimes it's to reduce costs, especially if you tend to be in very expensive metro areas like in New York, San Francisco. Most of the time, a company is realigning geographically its headquarters footprint for strategic business reasons. And that could be anything from, a company is undergoing major change. It wants to essentially clean house and have a new talent pool, breath of fresh air. Could be the companies need to be closer to market. Others, we got to get the specific types of talent that's only available in certain markets. We can't find it in an existing location. Sometimes it's a consolidation with a field office or being closer to manufacturing, whatever. These strategic reasons aren't, they're not going to change. They're going to continue to drive where headquarters locate. It's still going to be an issue for headquarters of talent pool, the specific talent that a company needs. Sometimes that's industry specific, sometimes that's functional specific, or both. And air service is really important, many times to global cities or to at least to domestic gateways and to company facilities. I do see one trend that I think will emerge because of COVID, and it kind of makes good business sense. Rather than, when a company is considering relocation of a headquarters, rather than moving the entire headquarters operation to a new center, I think companies will seriously consider slicing off a portion of the operation, and it could be a back or a middle office, who knows, and putting that operation in what I call a satellite concept, like a hub and spoke. So there'd be a satellite operation, and that gets you away then from high density within the headquarters, and then take as much space in high-rise buildings and so forth. It spreads the risk in terms of health risk and so forth. Spreads the risk from natural disasters and other disasters, and it allows you to tap labor markets, which again are going to be tight. So it gives you much more flexibility to grow. So that's one trend I do see: the emergence of satellite offices, and more than likely that satellite offices will be going into tier 2 and tier 3 metro areas, where the headquarters will pretty much, generally speaking, be in tier 1 metros.
Great. What about you, Seth? We're talking about trends and what we see, kind of what your predictions are, kind of the projects you're working now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Honestly, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think we're seeing a variety of things. As Dennis said, I think we're seeing some of that movement towards satellite offices, sort of out of the downtown core. And I think, that was sort of the idea, getting out of downtown core, getting out of elevators, getting out of high rises. Me personally, I think people's memories are pretty short, and I think once things sort of calm down, that we might go a little bit back to normal. But, we're also seeing the opposite, basic moves to no one have any office, straight remote work, and that has a bunch of complications in terms of where do you go, and even if you've got remote workers, do you need them to all be in the same city, or can they be spread out all over the country? That has impacts on what you do from an economic development standpoint. So I guess the short answer is I don't really know. I will say the majority of things we're seeing now are an exit of space. People don't need as much office as they originally had. And I think, if somebody was saying we need 100,000 square feet, maybe they're like, oh, maybe we only need 75,000 because they know some sort of hybrid of work from home is going to happen. But how that sort of filters through the whole site selection arena, I don't know if we really know yet. But, we're obviously keeping a close eye on it to figure out what the next trend is going to be.
Seth, let's stay on that topic of remote work. Every economic developer wants to know how remote work is going to impact, the work that we do, the space needs that are available. What are your thoughts on how it will impact future space needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be a larger component of it than there ever was. I think that this has been a forced case study, if you will, to see if it actually works. And I think most people have said, yeah, it does work and works pretty well, maybe better than we had thought. I would say, of the CBRE client base, that's the overwhelming majority of clients have said this works way better than we thought. we probably need a little less space than we thought. What do we do, kind of thing. Me personally, I don't. I think the question is going to be, and maybe this is my own personal opinion, is that I think people are going to want to be in the office to some extent. Whether that's 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 4 days a week. But I don't think everybody wants to be in the office every day of the week, from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever your hours end up being. But the question is, like, if you've got a bunch of people that are in the office 3 days a week, what does that mean for your space? If everybody comes in on the same 3 days, you still need the same amount of space. So it's really sort of like an architectural planning case study in terms of how to deal with it. The ramifications on the economic development side are a little interesting because you're going to likely have a little bit less capital investment, especially into those office properties. But at the same time, you're going to have the same amount of jobs. It's just that those people won't be going into the office as much. So sort of interesting in what you have to do in terms of adjusting your strategy, adjusting potentially your economic incentives contracts. So a lot to still be worked out, I guess, is a short answer.
Dennis, you mentioned a tight labor market, satellite offices, maybe the headquarters is in a tier one, kind of the can't say it this morning. The others are moving to like a tier 2 or tier 3 community. Yes. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, a question that I got from some colleagues was, how can maybe some of these tier 2 and tier 3 communities, how can they position themselves? How can they really help to capture some of that might be flowing down from these corporate headquarters? Do you have any input on things that they could do or opportunities for those tier 2s?
Yeah, Lori, this hasn't changed. It's really, what is really important, again, I get back, what's really important for companies that are locating satellite operations, number one is talent. So, I think it's incumbent upon communities to say, okay, do we have any pillars of our economy where we may stand out for satellite offices? Maybe we got a concentration in technology. Maybe there's a concentration in financial services. Who knows? Maybe there's a concentration in manufacturing. You go after manufacturing headquarters, whatever they may be. And then to demonstrate the talent pool specific to those kind of functions. I look at it, what is the generic talent pool the companies are going to be looking for? And then if we break it down in specific industries, what kind of talent is going to be required? And to define that talent and go beyond just what's reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and say, look, here's what we have to offer in terms of an existing talent pool. You align those occupations with the talent coming out of colleges and universities so that you can see what the flow is into the system. And there I'd say you go out about 100 miles for that. The talent base in a metro area, you go out 45 minutes for a satellite office. And then, what is the price point? Companies are looking for value, as they always have. So you need to have a significant price point differential vis-a-vis where the tier 1 cities would be for the mother lode, if you will, the flagship, and also from the ultimate origin point that a company may relocate from, like in New York. I can tell you right now, the companies that are putting satellite offices outside of New York, they're only going to consider areas where the price delta is a minimum of 20%. So again, knowing what the requirements are and then documenting what your advantages are, and it really comes down. I mean, yes, office space, all that's important, but it's the talent pool, the talent pipeline, the price point. That's the key. That's what you sell, and then you fill it in with the other, factors that are important, air service and so forth.
Great. So Mark, let me ask you, we've talked about remote work, we've talked about space needs. The other thing that's on economic developers' minds is this whole virtual site visit. So how have you been doing them? Can you give us some examples of things that you've seen that have worked really well? Maybe some stories if they haven't worked well, so we don't repeat it?
Well, Lori, I think virtual visits, if you look at the last 10 years, I think they've been increasing in popularity to a certain extent, COVID or no COVID. Being in the field is the most expensive and time-consuming part of a search. And as much of that can be done via the desk or done via databases is better. So fast forward to COVID, many people have tried to postpone visits. We've done a number of virtual site visits, and they're helpful in my view to a point. But ultimately, it's kind of like, you know, you're buying a house and you see a great picture and you look at all the data and the schools look good, and then you get there and you see there's a big pump station out front or the power lines are in the back. I mean, you've got to get there to get the look and the feel of the qualitative. I mean, we're sending in our company 2 teams out in the field, one in the Northeast, one in the Southeast next week, because we have got to do that. So I think the economic development community has done a good job in terms of technology, in terms of trying to show more via drone footage or other things, but ultimately it's not an end all. I think it just takes a bit more of the time out of the field, and that's worthwhile. That's been done well, and that's fantastic. And I think, kind of like we're all talking about with headquarters, there's going to be some equilibrium after COVID where maybe we do spend a little less time in the field and a little more time virtually, but it's not going to be 100%.
Okay. So guys, I think we've got just a couple minutes left during this portion of our hour together. And to wrap things up, I think economic developers at heart always have to be optimists, and, you know, good always comes from bad. So I want you guys to give us a quick thought about what good things you see coming in 2021. And Seth, I'll start with you.
Good question. Hopefully we see a lot of good things coming in 2021. You know, as it pertains to economic development, you know, I think that given all the economic development agencies, whether it's state, local, utility, whatever it may be, you know, had a good 6 months to sort of say, okay, you know, let's take a step back and let's sort of focus on where are we strong, where are we weak, and what can we do? You know, in the regular course of business, you don't get that break. You know, me too, you know, I had the same conversation with myself and my team, you know, and I think that's going to lead to some good, interesting, innovative things. And, you know, I think that actually, it might not just be an economic development. You know, you might see new music, new movies, whatever, because people really had some time to just get creative, you know. So I think there's probably going to be some of that. And being that, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like. So I think that's one. You know, I think forcing, you know, Mark alluded to it earlier, forcing people to sort of work remotely on the economic development side, I think is maybe going to force people to be a little bit more computer or technology savvy. You know, I think they're just going to have to be able to do some stuff that normally you did in person, you know, over the computer now. And I think that might make everyone's lives a little bit easier. It'd be nice if I could get on one less airplane a year, spend a little more time with my family. So I think that's going to happen. You know, I think it's just forced to be that way. So that's my 2 cents. What
do you think, Mark?
Well, Laurie, I started the year with an unpopular position. I wanted there to be a recession this year because I felt like we were going to have one anyway, and why not do it in an election year and get it over with? And
it's your fault.
I got a little more than I bargained for. I wish for too much. I'm excited about next year because we have had a downturn. We have had this time to reflect. And I think I really feel good about next year. We got to get, you know, these therapeutics and vaccines cranking, and maybe it'll be a little later next year. But I think once the fear factor lessens to a great extent, we're positioned for so many reasons to be rethinking how projects are located and how things work. And I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be good for all of our businesses. And as far as the economic development teams, you know, they're incredibly important. They're more important than they've ever been. They're going to have to figure out some new things because, you know, the variables are going to change. So it's an exciting time for them. And frankly, towards the end of 2019, you know, I'm not sure some locations revered their economic development teams like they should have. You know, well, we got full employment. Why do we want to bother with this? Why are we funding it? Well, it's changed, and these people are more important than they've ever have been. And so that'll be good for all of us.
What about you, Dennis?
Well, other than the Buffalo Bills winning the Super Bowl, I'm pretty bullish on 2021. I think that, this is just my opinion, that starting probably in Q2, you will see a surge in consumer spending, housing starts and so forth. That's going to lead to increased demand for consumer products and hence accelerated expansion of manufacturing by consumer goods manufacturers. I believe that will be followed by capital goods manufacturers as well. You take that with growth and the more, what started before the pandemic, regionalization of supply chains. That means there are going to be more regional manufacturing plants. Couple those two trends together, and you're going to see a lot more manufacturing location activity in the U.S. That's a good sign. And I think some of that is also going to be reverse investment, and I do see Chinese reverse investment being on the uptick as well. And office location, same thing. They're due to growth and expansion and consolidations and strategic changes in corporations. There's going to be a lot more dispersion of office operations. And when you look at some, even for smaller communities, I mean smaller communities, I believe that certain back office operations can be gravitated to smaller communities that have broadband, that have an educated talent pool, good training programs, good infrastructure in terms of available buildings. You got to have product. That's going to be important. But for smaller communities, I think in addition to manufacturing, office operations will provide growth opportunities for these areas.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for a great panel. I think at this point, we're ready to go back to the tables and mix and mingle a little bit, answer a few more questions. So thank you all again. Appreciate your time this morning.